The media paints a picture of CIA that is not real. So I wrote this book, according to the US federal government, is a classified document. Honey traps are sex exploitation operations. I was at a hotel and they usually try to send you prostitutes. They try to set you up. When you're trying to target somebody with sex, it's not at all what you think it is. In the movies, it's like beautiful lady walks in and she sits next to a guy at the bar and they hit it off. That's not how it actually works. In real life, that woman would have been chosen for that man based off of his profile. You're looking for people who are pretending to be something they're not. When CIA trains us to seduce, it's centered around the emotional connection. Elicitation is a process where you indirectly collect information about another person. If you and I were having a conversation, first, I would ask questions. I wouldn't tell stories. I wouldn't talk. The brain has two hemispheres. Your left hemisphere is your logical hemisphere. Your right is your creative hemisphere. When you're accessing the fact-based, logical part of your brain, your eyes actually move in the same direction as that hemisphere. But when I ask you to invent something new, you're going to look to your right. CIA prepares us for an advanced interrogation. The first thing is whenever you're being questioned, whenever you're being interrogated, whether it's a job interview or whether it's an actual military interrogation, the interrogator, they want to demonstrate to you that they're in control. So they might be 5 or 7 minutes late. That's just to show I'm important. You will wait for me. I won't wait for you.
If you were to give us like the ultimate survival kit.
The two things that CIA teaches us are most important.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode. We have a very special guest joining us today, Andrew Bustamante. He's a former CIA officer, the founder of EverydaySpy.com, and new author of his book, Shadow Cell, which was absolutely amazing. Andrew, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me back, Francesca.
Yeah, it's amazing to have you back and to have you here in London. I read your book and it was super interesting and fascinating. I finished it in one day. So it was a really good read. And yeah, our last podcast did so well. I mean, it's like my most watched podcast on YouTube. So, you know, people loved it then. I'm sure they're going to love today's conversation as well. So yeah, super excited.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an exciting journey with the book for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised to hear how much people enjoyed our last conversation because you speak very intelligently about how to apply psychological points of view, perspectives, and skills into everyday life, which is exactly what Everyday Spy is all about. And honestly, I think that too much of psychology becomes academic. And when it's academic, it's not useful.
Yeah.
But when you can break it down so that people can use it at home or at work, when they can use it to motivate themselves in the gym, all of a sudden it becomes something so much more accessible.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And I want to talk about the book, of course. First of all, you know, you talk about your story in the CIA, your experience. I can imagine that it was really hard to get approval from the CIA, right?
Yeah, it actually took 3 years of fighting with CIA before they would approve this book. So the book was written and complete in 2021.
Oh my God.
And then in 2022, when it was supposed to be published, the whole world melted down. 2022, you had obviously Russia invaded Ukraine. You had increased conflict between China and the United States. You had tensions across the Middle East. It was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
And CIA did not want our book to be out in the world when the world was so geopolitically tense. So they actually decided in 2021, late 2021, to classify the entire book.
Wow.
They classified it as a secret government document.
Oh my God.
And they told us that it would never be released. Wow. So that's what started this 3-year battle. And then in this year, we at the end of 2024, we actually challenged CIA legally.
Wow.
And we told, because in the United States, we have something called the First Amendment. And the First Amendment allows you to say things about the government that are within your purview without the government reprimanding you.
Yeah.
And that was the legal argument that we used. So we threatened them with a First Amendment lawsuit. And that is the only reason they approved the book. The book that you read, according to the US federal government, is a classified document.
Wow, that's so interesting. And can you tell me, like, why you wrote the book in the first place?
Absolutely. So the book is co-written with my wife. And my wife is somebody that not many people get to hear from and not many people get to meet but she was also a clandestine CIA intelligence officer. But my wife has an anxiety disorder. She has depression issues. She has mental health challenges. And her story is central to the book itself. Yes, I'm very vocal about what I did, but what my wife did in many ways is even more impressive than the work that I've done. So I wanted to find a way to bring her story to the public so that everybody could learn from her. But in addition to that, there are just, the media paints a picture of CIA that is not real. It's not true. And then what ends up happening is, as people write books, people write articles, when people talk about CIA, they get it more wrong because it's based off of the mainstream media narrative. So I wrote this book to give people a sense of what the work really is like, what it actually looks like, who the people really are. They're not James Bond and Jason Bourne. They're much more like you and me.
That's so interesting. And yeah, I mean, your wife plays such a huge part in the book. It was really interesting to read about that. How did you and your wife become officers, and what was your role in the organization?
So my wife and I met at CIA, and we didn't know each other beforehand. And even when we met for the first time at CIA, we didn't realize that we were both students, both equals, right? I thought she was an instructor, and she, of course, knew that I was a newly minted entering student. But we had completely different pathways to CIA. I came from the military. I came from government. I came with a very high security clearance that I had received when I was with the Air Force. My wife was a social worker. She actually had multiple degrees. She already had a law degree. She had a master's degree. She had a bachelor's degree. And then she was working with refugees. And that's how she was recruited into CIA. I was actively recruited by a recruiter. My wife actually applied through an online portal because she saw CIA at a job fair.
Oh, wow.
So we came in completely different ways, and we came in for very different skill sets. My wife came in for something called targeting. Targeting officers are the people who find and identify individuals of interest. And then I came in as a core collector trainee, which is the person who goes out and actually meets with agents of interest in the field.
So tell me the story of how you and your wife met. And, I was surprised to find out that CIA didn't have a problem with, romance in the organization.
People are often surprised by that, which is funny to me because when I went there, I wasn't thinking about dating. I was obviously very excited for my career.
Yeah.
And I think when my wife went to CIA, it was the same way. We were excited to make an impact and make a difference. But then we met each other, and we made friends, obviously, with other people too. And then the question of, how do I have a romantic life along with my professional life? That question never even occurred to me until after I was already there. So the way that we met during our in-processing. When you join CIA, this isn't very sexy, but when you join CIA, you spend weeks going through training that's really very similar to corporate training. You learn about your health insurance options. You learn about how to call in sick. You learn how to take a day off. And it's very complicated because you're undercover.
Yeah.
So you have to call special phone numbers, and you have to use special code words, and you have to do all this stuff just to have a medical appointment or just to come in to work late. As an example, when you go to CIA, when you work at CIA, every morning you cross through a gate. And the gate has security officers. And the gate security officers have to wave a badge and to an electronic badge reader, and that's how the building, how the agency knows that you came to work that day. They don't care if you're coming to work for work. That's not what they're interested in. They're interested in knowing that you came to work to know that you're safe, to know that you weren't kidnapped, you weren't killed, you weren't hurt, you haven't run away and join the Russians, right? So that's what they're looking for. It's an accountability measure.
Yeah.
So when you don't show up for work, the computer knows.
Yeah.
And it flags you as a risk. Maybe you got hurt, maybe you got kidnapped, or maybe you fled to the other side. So it's really important that you have that accountability every single day.
Yeah.
So when my wife and I first started working, we had to learn about how life would look. how everything from health insurance to medical appointments would work, and how you do all of that while also being undercover.
Yeah.
Paychecks are not as I could go on and on with the mundane, boring things that are just more complicated when you live undercover.
Yeah, absolutely. And what were the challenges of, dating someone in the CIA? And also, I'm curious, what if someone in the CIA dates someone outside of the CIA? Are they even allowed to tell the person they're a spy?
Yeah, there's all sorts of challenges to dating, period, when you're at CIA. And what also is interesting is the vast majority of people who come to CIA come single. There are very few people who come in married. They exist, but there are few of them because it's so much more difficult. Now, if you're coming in as a married person, the CIA is thinking about your spouse. CIA is thinking about your kids. CIA is worried about not just your parents, but your in-laws. So just imagine, how do you keep everything safe when somebody is signing up and they're married with 3 kids?
Yeah.
Right there, you've got the spouse, the 3 kids, and the in-laws. You have 6 other people that you have to worry about keeping secrets along with the husband or the wife. So they really like single people. What we found is that because they recruit so many single people, they also expect psychologically, they have our profile. They know we are high achieving. They know that we're workaholics. They know that we are risk tolerant. Well, what happens when you put a bunch of high achieving, risk tolerant young people?
High testosterone.
Yes, you put them all in a room together, things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So while I didn't know that when I joined, once my wife and I met and we started dating, then we could see it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere, and there's a very high turnover rate where, boyfriends and girlfriends last for a period of time and then they break up. And they break up because operations take people to different parts of the world, and sometimes people get hurt, and sometimes people have trauma, and sometimes sometimes just relationships don't work out. People are not loyal to each other. They're not faithful to each other. So there's a very high turnover rate, and CIA is okay with that, because if you are at CIA and I'm at CIA and we start dating, well, we can't really be ourselves out in public because we're both undercover. So what's the cover reason that we are having a date in a restaurant outside of here, outside of CIA, right? How did you meet me and how did I meet you? Because we can't say we met at work. We have 2 different jobs. Yeah. And we can't say that we met through friends because we have completely different sets of friends. So it just becomes that much more convenient to stay at the building, to date at the building, to work 12, 15, 16 hours, have breakfast together, have lunch together, have dinner together, have coffee together, and never leave. And CIA loves that because now they have people working all the time.
That's not very romantic.
It sounds like it's not romantic, but it's strangely liberating.
Okay.
Because you have to keep so many secrets outside of the building. But inside of the building, you're safe.
So if you're dating someone outside, can you tell them you're a spy, for instance?
It's the hardest thing. So first of all, like, you're from Romania, yes?
Yeah.
So it's very common in Europe for people to date individuals from other countries.
Yeah.
So you've probably had a British boyfriend, and maybe you've had like a French boyfriend. In the United States, when you work at CIA, you don't want any relationships with foreigners. Ooh. It's very, very administratively difficult. It's complicated. There's even certain countries that are called non-fraternization, non-frat countries, where you legally cannot know anybody. You can't be friends with anybody from a non-frat country.
Like what country?
China is a non-frat country. Belarus, North Korea, Iran, Syria, Russia. These are non-frat countries, meaning even if you meet somebody, you have to report that you met them.
Wow.
If you sleep with somebody, you have to report that you slept with them. You have to tell people about these relationships because if they come up some other way, then you have violated a fundamental agreement for your employment. So I say that because obviously dating a foreigner is very difficult. And dating outside, dating a non-CIA person is also difficult, but it's not as difficult. Because when you're dating an American citizen, you don't have to write everything down. Okay. You don't have to say we went on a date. You don't have to say we had sex. You don't have to say any of that. But you still have to protect your secrets.
Very interesting. And I was curious, what does CIA look for when recruiting spies? I know in the book you mentioned, and you just mentioned also that your wife has anxiety disorder. So how come that wasn't the problem?
When CIA looks to recruit individuals, it's not looking at the person as much as it's looking at the position. And there are many, many different positions at CIA. If you recall from our book, we built a team, and that team had technical operations. It had translators. It had individuals who were both men and women who went and carried out core collection. It had targeters. It had analysts.
Yeah.
Well, those are 6 different positions. And that's just what we had in the field. You also have the people who make all of the fake documents. You have the people who create hidden boxes and hidden drawers inside of furniture. You have people who create costumes, the actual disguises that we wear. You have people who plan travel. You have people who make fake bank accounts. You have people who can do offensive and defensive cyber operations. So you have all these skills underneath one organization called CIA. So when they recruit for people, every single one of those jobs has a profile, a personality profile that CIA knows will succeed in that job. So sometimes you want to hire an extrovert to be a case officer, but you want to hire an introvert to be a cyber ops officer. You want to hire somebody who is compassionate, and you want to put them into the role of a propaganda artist because they can tap into that empathy and that compassion, and that's great for propaganda. But then you want to find somebody who's really cold and harsh to put them into a technical job because they're going to be creating weapons that could hurt somebody or poison somebody. So you don't want them to be compassionate. So all these detailed, complex personality profiles are already documented. So when they recruit people from everywhere. And as they learn your personality, then they start to connect you with these different jobs. It's not like you get to choose a job and apply for that job.
Yeah.
Instead, you apply to work at CIA, and CIA tells you what jobs you qualify for based on your personality profile.
Wow, that's so interesting. So for someone who's an undercover spy, for instance, what profiling are they looking for?
It's not complimentary. It's funny because when I was identified and when they proposed that I work for the National Clandestine Service, the NCS, which is also known as the Directorate of Operations, I was super excited. I was like, oh, that is the hero's journey. That is the movie star. That is what you all read about. I was like, absolutely. I'm super excited. It wasn't until after I said yes and I started going through the training that I realized when you are a field operator, when you're a core collector, you're all fucked up. You need external validation. You have constant self-doubt. You are incredibly self-critical. These are all the profile indicators they're looking for. Wow. Because somebody full of self-doubt, somebody who's, codependent on external validation, these are people who will work their ass off to make somebody else happy.
Yeah.
They're
so true.
Aren't they? And they're high achievers and they're intelligent and they're hardworking, but they never feel like they deserve the credit. They never feel like they deserve love. They never feel like they deserve forgiveness. Yeah. So they're always a very lonely, kind of self-loathing person. And that's exactly who I am. And that's exactly what makes us good at the job. So as I learned this along the way, of course, there's also good things like, where we like novelty. We don't like doing the same thing every day. We like having independent decision-making power. We like being creative and we're risk tolerant. So those are all the things that you see in the movies. But then there's a whole dark side to it too that you have to admit to if you're going to objectively look at what makes a field officer successful.
That's so interesting. So they're looking at your childhood trauma, like, okay, they have need for validation or, all these things, or they didn't get validation from their dad. So now,
Correct.
They want to be an officer.
If you can almost, it's strange when I got to middle management and I started to actually recruit and interview people, it was a very twisted experience because you're celebrating other people's pain.
Wow.
Like, oh, this person's mother died in a car accident.
Oh my God.
And then they went to go live with their grandparents and the grandfather was arrested for drug dealing. You're like, this guy's going to be great. because they've had they've had this trauma at life, and then they lost their father figure. Here's a person that's going to be completely loyal because they need us to step in and be their family.
Wow.
And that's how you start to think about it. And you start to see people as products of their background, and that leads to probabilities of how they will behave psychologically. And what's nice when it comes to recruiting for CIA understands that fundamental programming never goes away. When they're 18 or when they're 88, they will still need external validation. And the only way that they would ever get past it is if they went to counseling. Yeah. And maybe a decade of counseling. But they'll never go to counseling.
Why not?
Because they're the kind of person who doesn't want to admit that they've got something wrong with them. So they doubt counseling, and they don't believe in counseling, and they don't want to go share their stories with somebody else because they're going to believe that person doesn't care. And anybody who's hearing this conversation right now, who is a high-achieving person with childhood trauma, who also knows that they would never go to counseling because they don't trust counseling, because they don't want to admit their weakness, and they don't believe a counselor really cares about them, that is exactly the kind of person who CIA looks to bring on the field, and they go do amazing things.
Wow. So, they can apply for CIA. They're the perfect person. But so I want to talk more about the story in the book, can you tell me, you talk about Falcon, you talk about the cell. So, you'd use all these terms. What do they mean, and what was the story?
Yeah. So there's a lot of code words that are used in the book. And that's because, remember, it was a classified document in 2021. Yeah. So the only way that CIA was able to legally allow us to publish it was by taking the real names and converting them into crypts or encrypted names. So that's what you're seeing when you hear me talk about Falcon, or when you hear me talk about Wolf, or when you hear me talk about Badger. These are real places, real geographies, real cities, real countries. However, they've been encrypted with a name. Yeah. So the story essentially is that my wife and I, when we were at CIA as junior officers, we were doing very different jobs. She was a targeter, I was a core collector. We had different geographical specialties. I was in all of the bad third world countries, and my wife was in many of the what's known as hard target countries. We talked about those non-frat countries. Non-frat countries are usually also hard target countries, meaning they're the countries that distrust Americans the most. So we were coming from two very different worlds inside of CIA when we were called to a meeting, and inside that meeting, senior leadership at CIA told us that they wanted us to take a new assignment, an assignment together, since they knew we were married, and an assignment that was dangerous and kind of new, because they needed a new way of collecting intelligence, a new way of running operations. They didn't tell us at the moment why, but they just told us, we think you would be good for the job. For me, we've talked about my fucked up profile, right? For me, I doubted it right away. I was like, this is too good to be true. They're going to screw us. This is dangerous. This is not going to be a good idea. But it was still exciting. For my wife is wired completely different than me. She's actually wired to trust people first. So when she got the invitation, she had the complete opposite reaction. She said, this is an amazing opportunity. It's going to be so good for your career and so good for my career. And we're going to go help the world. So we had these very different points of view about the same invitation. And that's what started us on the whole journey of being assigned together as a tandem couple, going overseas to a country that we can only call Wolf. And from Wolf, we started to build a whole new kind of spy operation. And we had to find people to bring into our spy operation. We had to find CIA officers that were good at technology, and others that were good at languages, and others that were good at stealing secrets. We had to find people for disguises and travel and all sorts of things. And as we found them, we would recruit them into our cell. CIA officers, so they were just like me and my wife, but they would come into our cell, and then they would start working the assignments and the jobs, the missions that we gave them. And that's how the shadow cell was built. Now, the primary target for the shadow cell was another country. And that country is a hard target country that we're not allowed to disclose. But that country is what we call Falcon. So we all lived in Wolf, and we worked against Falcon. So that meant we would travel to Falcon. It meant that we would travel to other countries in the region and work against Falcon from those countries. So it's almost like if you're working against the UK from Ireland, or if you're working against Romania from Poland, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about building. So all sorts of operations, but that's the core of the Shadow Cell story, is how we were picked up, how we were recruited, how we built the operations, and then how the operations succeeded or failed against this country called Falcon.
Super interesting. And I know you say you used a terrorist tactic, right? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so when CIA recruits you, they bring you in and they put you through very, very robust training. Well, in that training, they teach you everything you need to know about espionage, but they teach you how to do operations. So when CIA comes to you then and says, hey, we need you to create a new kind of operation, you have no idea how to do that because you've only ever done one thing, what they taught you to do. It's like somebody coming to you and teaching you how to make a chocolate cake and then telling you, we need you to create a whole new kind of chocolate cake. You're like, well, all I know is what you taught me. Right? You take these ingredients and you mix them together and you bake them at this temperature. And they're like, yeah, that's what we taught you. Now you need to find a different way to do it. And it was a very difficult challenge. So that was what they asked us to do. Well, I think anybody out there who's innovative, anybody out there who's creative, or anybody out there who does anything from music to art understands that you have to pull inspiration from the world around you. So my wife and I, when we were junior officers, before we got called on to Shadow Cell, we were working a lot of counterterrorism. Everybody in the United States in CIA works counterterrorism. And that means you have to learn about terrorists. You have to learn how they carry out their operations. You have to learn how to follow the money. You have to learn how they communicate. You have to learn how they strategize. And it's very difficult because they speak Arabic. Most of the time, they're Islamic extremists. They're all over the world. They're not well funded. So it's a very, very different kind of target. Well, when we were in Wolf and we had to build a new kind of operation, that's what came to our mind. Is my wife, I have to give her all the credit, she asked the question, what if we tried to collect intelligence the same way that terrorists try to hurt people? What if we use terrorist tactics, but we use them for stealing secrets? And that's where the Shadow Cell methodology came from. This whole idea of creating a cell with people in the cell and creating layers of compartmentation so that people don't know who's in the cell. And that's exactly how terrorists operate. Sleeper cells operate that way, and mission, like bombing cells operate that way, and suicide cells operate that way. So why not have an intelligence cell that operates the same way? The other thing we knew is that the United States had spent 20 years fighting a war on terror. And nobody else really was in that war with us. Yes, there were British soldiers and there were Canadian soldiers and there were UN soldiers. Yes, there's Australians. There were people who fought terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq. Absolutely. There were thousands of people who died. And I don't want to discredit that. But when it came to who was footing the majority of the cost, and when it came to who was losing the majority of the lives, it was the United States. So we had this incredible knowledge base that we could pull from, understanding terrorism and understanding how they worked and understanding how they communicated, understanding how they financed their operations. We had all this information that none of our adversaries had. The Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, the Iranians, they didn't have this information because they didn't fight the war on terror, but we did. So we knew that we could create something that our adversaries would not be able to replicate.
Super interesting. And how did you apply that in the mission in Falcon? Can you tell me a bit some of the stories?
Yeah, so I would have to travel into Falcon frequently. So I had to leave the country of Wolf to travel into a hostile country known as Falcon. And on those trips, my job was to start building the foundation for operators who would come after me. So we had multiple people in the cell whose job it was to meet with assets and steal secrets. Well, in order for you to go someplace where you steal secrets, you have to have somebody who was there before you who planted the money or planted the cell phones or planted the hard drives.
Yeah.
Somebody has to go before you. That was my job. So I would go and prepare the field for field officers to then come and carry out their different operations. Because we were using this terrorist cell model, it meant that the only person who was really exposed to the Falcon government was me. Because I was the one that was coming to Falcon, and I was the one who was buying cell phones, and I was the one who was buying, claiming cash as I flew in. I was the person buying gold or jewels or whatever else. So my persona, my cover identity in Falcon was known by the government. Everybody who came after me didn't have a footprint like that because my job was to buy precious metals and then hide those precious metals so that when they came into the country, they could do what's known as a dead drop and find a package or a box somewhere and then take that package or box, and inside it would be what they need to pay an asset off. That's completely blind to the federal government of that country.
Yeah.
So same thing with cell phones, same thing with disk drives or computers or whatever else. So that model of having one person doing what's known as procurement so that somebody else can take the procured item and use it operationally, that is a very terrorist tactic. Generally speaking, in the United States, when you're a CIA government officer, you don't have a procurement offer, like a procurement process like that, because you need everything to be very transparent, because you need for taxes and for American law, you have to be able to show what's known as I just lost that word too.
That's okay.
Yeah, an advocates or some sort of continuation of receipts, right? So we were borrowing from the terrorist group in order to find a way around that still made it transparent to the federal government.
Yeah. Ooh, super interesting. And what was your undercover persona, and how did you manage to, protect your identity and make a believable undercover persona?
Yeah, so the alias name that I use in the book is Alex Hernandez. And just like real life, when you create a different profile, a different life, you create it very similar to your own life. So while my name is Andrew, I called myself in the book Alex, but even in real life, I called myself by another name that started with the same letter, A. And that's part of how we build our aliases. You build an alias that's more true than it is false. We call it just 10% different. So 90% of your background is the same, 10% is different. And there's lots of reasons for that. As silly as, your name is Francesca. If you decided to call yourself Jamie and you were walking down the street and somebody across the street called the name Francesca, if you looked, your name's Jen, why are you looking?
Yeah.
Or your name's Jamie, why are you looking?
Yeah.
But if you are Francesca, but then you call yourself Francine, somebody across the street screams Francesca, you look. And at least now you can say, oh, I thought they said Francine, right? So that's one of the examples of how, in real life, how we actually build our aliases. There's no Bobs who become Victors, and there are no Jameses who become Donovans. That's not how it really works. So when you're creating those aliases, my alias, Alex Hernandez, was a person who went abroad as part of a medium-sized business, a business that was growing and a business that needed to source materials from Falcon. And the reason I came up with that methodology was because I needed Falcon to want me to visit, because I had to get a visa to go. And most countries are very, very eager to win business. So if you're looking to get access to a country and you're looking to get past all the visa controls and the access controls and the distrust, if you're a business that's trying to bring business into that country, they usually say yes. So that's why Alex Hernandez worked in a medium-sized business that was growing, so that when I applied for my visa would be approved. And then, of course, we had experts, specialists at CIA who built the entire foundation, the whole background of this fake business. So all the fake records, the fake money transactions, the fake customers, the fake, you name it, bank accounts, so that when Falcon reviewed my background, they would see all these years and years worth of business growth that they wouldn't be able to verify because they don't have access to American systems.
Yeah.
So they see a tax record, but they don't know if that taxes is real. And they see receipts, but they don't know if those other companies are real.
Yeah.
So that was how I built Alex Hernandez, so that he could be in a foreign country looking to source new products from that country, which means we're going to use foreign dollars, Canadian dollars, American dollars, British pounds, euros. We're going to use foreign dollars to buy your products, which is better for your country. And that's how my alias was built and how many aliases are built.
But even if you have like the perfect sort of background story, you still need to be super comfortable with the lie, and to, if someone comes to you on the street, what's your name, your background, you need to be super comfortable with lying. So how are you able to achieve that?
If you remember, we were talking earlier about how they recruit for different jobs. And one of the personality profiles that they look for in a field operator, they're looking for something called moral flexibility. And moral flexibility means exactly what it sounds like. It means that you have a set of morals that you believe to be true, but you're flexible, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't use one today, maybe you use it tomorrow. And there are many, many people, if you don't know this, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, there are many, many people who are very good naturally at lying. And they are morally flexible by nature. That's just their psychology.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that they're cheating spouses.
Yeah.
They just sometimes want to have sex with a different person.
Yeah.
That doesn't, it's very difficult for somebody who's black and white to understand this, because people who think very black and white are thinking in absolute terms, right? You have to be loyal to this, and you have to be loyal to that, and you have to be committed. And there are lots of people out there who are able to have a commitment, but then they're also flexible. They're able to say, I would never hurt a person, but as soon as somebody threatens their child, they will hurt that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they won't lose sleep over it. So that's the kind of person that CIA recruits for the kind of job that I do. And I am that kind of person. I am that morally flexible person. I don't want to hit you, but if you threaten my child, I will hit you.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt anybody, but if you threaten my family, I will hurt you. I don't want to, here's a perfect example, a quick story. I was driving back from a training event. I was in CIA. I had just gone through a 1-week training. The training I was in was a driving and first response, like first aid kind of training, field triage. And I was about 4 hours from home. So the training was at a secret location about 4 hours outside of Virginia. And I'm driving back to Virginia, back to my home, and I'm not in my own name, right? So I've got a driver's license that isn't me, and the car is rented under an account that isn't me. And I'm driving back. I'm still in the United States. I'm an American citizen. I'm a CIA officer. And as I'm driving, there's this horrible car accident. And I'll never forget it, because I was driving in the United States, we have highways, and highways are 2 lanes going in one direction and 2 lanes going in an opposite direction. And they usually have a small gap of grass, or maybe they have some kind of rail between them. So I'm driving, and it's high speed, but it's also busy. So there's lots of cars, and the cars are moving fast. And as I'm driving and I'm listening to music, I'm probably 2 hours into my drive, I see a big, what's known as an SUV in the United States, like a big truck. And I actually see it hit the curb and turn upside down in the air.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm driving, not underneath it, I'm driving behind it, but I actually see a car that turns, hits a thing, and then flips upside down and crashes. And when it crashes, cars are driving out of the way, it's spinning, everybody's moving 70 miles an hour. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but I see this horrible accident. And I know I just got back from a driving and first response course. Like, I could help. Yeah. But my driver's license is not mine. And the car I'm in is not mine. And if I go to this scene, there will be police here soon. There will be ambulances, there will be reports, there will be documentation. And we were trained that when you're undercover, when you're in any identity other than your own, you have to avoid any kind of documentation, any kind of U.S. government documentation or foreign documentation. So even though I could help, I didn't help. And I was okay with that because I have that moral flexibility.
So they look for people that can see the gray area, so not like black and white, but nuances and are flexible.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to put it. That's the same way my wife puts it, is it's living in the gray. It's not living in a world of right and wrong. It's not living in a world of good and bad. It's living in a world where this is good for me now, but bad for me later. And being able to understand how to navigate that world.
Really fascinating. And, you know, in the book, you mentioned that Falcon, you know, the country you were in, tried to trick you into a honey trap, I think you call it. Can you tell us what that means?
Absolutely. So honey traps are very common. Romanians use honey traps very often.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So honey traps are sex exploitation operations, what we call sexploitation, sexual exploitation. They're what you see in the movies anytime a beautiful girl talks to a man. Now, the movies make sexploitation operations. They make these honey traps, these honey pots. They make them very fake.
Yeah.
Right? Like a movie honey trap, beautiful girl walks into a bar and she's, you know, flirtatious with this guy. And that's how it works. And it's always fancy. And there's, you know, it's a beautiful first world bar and she's in a cocktail gown and everybody looks great. That's not how they work in real life.
Okay.
Because sexual exploitation in real life, most people's sexual frustrations are very dark. They're not the kind of, like, most people don't have a $40 drink at a bar when they have some sort of tension in their life. It's usually that's where they go because they have to be there for work, or that's where they go because they have to be there for an event, or maybe that's where they're staying and they're staying in a luxury hotel. But when people are looking to do something kind of sketchy, they go to sketchy places. So most actual sexploitation operations are sketchy. They're gay men approaching straight men who are bi-curious.
Ooh, interesting.
It's very difficult for the average person to understand how dark actual operations really are. Because if you want to get somebody to think about what the goal is in espionage, the goal is to turn somebody into a traitor, right? You're not trying to steal secrets about, like, what's your password. You're trying to steal secrets that the government has given that person. They've been trusted with a secret. So when you think about the average traitor is somebody who is seen by their country as a patriot. They've built a 15-year career in the military. They're a politician. They've grown to the top of their company. Like, these are people who have spent decades earning trust. And now you have to find a way to get them to violate that trust in just a few hours or a few weeks or a few months. How do you do that? You don't do that by approaching them on healthy issues. You don't talk to them about their kids and how they play soccer. You don't talk to them about the joys of marriage. You don't make friends with them on positive, light things. You connect with them on very dark, very secret things. Because when somebody is willing to go with you to a ladyboy bar, where you buy them a ladyboy prostitute. Once somebody has sex with a transvestite and you've paid for it, then they'll tell you any secret you want. Because what could possibly be more secret than that?
Wow.
Right? And that's the way true espionage works. So to get back to your original question, I was approached. I was at a hotel in Falcon, and I was in my Alex Hernandez persona. And as I was checking into the hotel, I was being given all the royal treatment because I was a foreigner, like I said, trying to bring business to Falcon, so they treat you very well. And part of that good treatment is they usually try to send you prostitutes. They try to set you up with people who will benefit you, but who will also compromise you.
Yeah.
So as I'm sitting there in my hotel, I get a phone call from the hotel concierge, and the hotel concierge says, we are gifting you a in-room massage, and all you have to do is tell us what time to send the person up. And right away, because we had studied Falcon, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that what that person would be bringing with them is more than a massage.
Yeah.
And I also knew, because of that phone call, that my room was bugged. Had to be. Because they wouldn't send somebody up to give me an in-room massage unless they had already known the room would be wired to record. So that gave me some very interesting and valuable information, because now I knew in that room I had to behave. I had to not just make good decisions about, whether or not I would have sex with somebody, but I had to also think about every phone call and every piece of paper that I took out and every note that I wrote down, because it was going to be wired.
Wow, that sounds really stressful. And I want to get into that in a bit, but I was really curious, just coming back to the honey trappers. What techniques do they use to sort of charm their targets? Do you learn anything like that in the CIA, for instance?
Absolutely. When you're trying to target somebody with sex, or trying to target somebody for sexual exploitation, it's not at all what you think it is. It's not what you see in the movies. It's not what you see in, books. This whole charm offensive. If you really think about what charm is nothing more than being able to quickly connect with somebody. And when you're talking about connection, what you're connecting with is not somebody's hobbies or interests. You're connecting with them emotionally. So when honey trap operations are built, the target that you're looking for is usually profiled so that you understand what their emotional foundation is. Now, there's only a few core emotions that drive most people. Joy is a core emotion, anger is a core emotion, fear is a core emotion, but so is shame, and so is guilt, and so is disgust, right? And what ends up happening is, anywhere in the world, most people hide their shame and their guilt and their disgust, and they overemphasize their joy and their happiness and their confidence. When you see somebody who's confident, probability-wise, they're most likely not actually a confident person, because there's 5 or 7 other core emotions. So how could everybody be happy? Clearly, 1 out of every 6 people is happy, but the other 5 are not happy. They're just hiding it. So when you're building these sexual exploitation operations, you're looking for people who are pretending to be something they're not. They're acting like they're happy, but in fact, they're really angry. In their soul, they're angry.
How would you know whether someone is faking it or someone is truly confident and happy?
Well, there's 2 ways. The first way, when you're talking about sex operations specifically, those aren't operations that you just wing. You don't make them up. You don't go out into the street and find somebody and then try to lure them in with sex on the first date, right? You have a dossier. You target the person. You create a profile. So for weeks before you ever meet them, you've got information about their travel patterns and their phone calls and what they're interested in and what they wear and what they drink and who they're talking to and all that stuff, right? So you don't see that in the movies. This is a big part of why it's important to understand real world operations versus the movies. In the movies, it's like, beautiful lady walks in and she sits next to a guy at the bar and they hit it off. That's not how it actually works. In real life, that woman would have been chosen for that man based off of his profile. Does he like tall women or short women? Does he like fat women or skinny women? Does he like young women or old women? Does he like women who are bossy or women who are passive? And then they would go in and they would find the perfect person to fit his profile. The other thing is, the perfect person is very rarely actually a trained intelligence officer. Because that perfect person, the person who actually has sex with the target, that person doesn't need to know how to collect secrets. All that person needs to know how to do is get the target to have sex with them. And then the cameras, the photos, the microphones, all of that creates the compromise. And then all you have to do is have an officer come in next. So if you go back to my story, the hotel called to offer me a massage. The person who would have come in and given me the massage and more would not have been an intelligence officer. That person would have been a hired masseuse / prostitute. The cameras that were in the room would have guaranteed that whatever happens in the room was recorded. And then what would have most likely happened is the masseuse would have left, or even right after sex would have happened, there would have been a knock at the door, and that would have been the intelligence officer who would have then come in and been like, you know what happened here. I know what happened here, but nobody else needs to know. That's how these operations actually work. And they are notoriously successful by former Soviet states and by the Russians, which is why Romania is one of those countries that not only does these operations, but does them well, because Romania was brought up in the world of the KGB.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I know you're not allowed to say who Falcon is, but I always thought it's Russia, like when I was reading the book. Also because you mentioned some fashion details, like some hats but yeah, I know you can say, but that's just putting it out there. But that's so interesting. But, like, does the CIA actually teach you? So I know you have like all this background information, but if you need to sort of seduce someone or charm someone on the spot, are there any sort of techniques that they teach you?
Absolutely. There's, when you really, like we were talking about, when you really think about charm and seduction alike are both an emotional connection.
Yeah. So
I don't want you to think of it in terms of a sexual connection. Sexual connections are real, and sometimes those exist. But I would venture to say that the average person has really only had maybe 2 or 3 moments in their entire life where they connected with somebody immediately sexually. But we've had hundreds of interactions where we've connected with people emotionally. And those people go on to become friends, or they go on to become boyfriends or girlfriends, or they go on to become, you name it, right? Yeah. Colleagues, partners in businesses. Yeah. Emotional connections are so much more common and so much more easy to create artificially than sexual connections. To actually find 2 people who are so incredibly sexually dynamic at the same time in the same place, that is a hard thing to do. So when it comes to seduction, when CIA trains us to seduce, when they train us to connect, it's not necessarily about the sex. It's never really centered around the sex. It's centered around the emotional connection.
And how do they do that?
You can learn someone's emotional state in the moment if you use assessment techniques, awareness techniques, body language, verbal intonation. There's a lot of skills that go into it. It's not difficult, but there are skills that go into it. So you can understand where they are standing. Are they coming from a place where they are angry at their core? Are they coming from a place where they are comfortable? Are they coming from a place where they feel threatened? And if you can connect on whatever those topics might be, then what ends up happening naturally is that person starts to feel like you and them are the same. And you need the target to feel that similarity, because it turns into something called trust, right? When they see in you that you are a reflection of their emotional state, they start to trust you because they subconsciously start to assume that you and them are going through the same emotional experience. This is why women who are breaking up oftentimes make friends with other women who are breaking up. Yeah. Have you ever had a moment where you're going through something difficult and then you meet somebody new and they're going through something difficult, and you're like,
instant connection.
And you're so surprised. You're like, I can't believe I met you at this one moment of all the people to meet. You're the one I met. No. At any given moment, hundreds of people are going through all sorts of different emotions. Yeah. It's just that you aren't always going through the same emotion that they are. Yeah. Trained intelligence officers, we change our emotional state to match your emotional state.
How do you do that? Are there some practical techniques?
It's all fabrication. That's what we call artificial relationship building. So as an example, if you and I were having a conversation and I wanted to get you to believe that I was in the same emotional state as you, first, I would ask questions. I wouldn't tell stories. I wouldn't talk. I would ask you questions. Where are you going? How was your day? Tell me how you felt about this. Tell me how you felt about that. I would validate your feelings. So if you were to say, oh, it's kind of a shitty day, it's gray, and my energy's low, I would validate that and I would say, oh, I agree. On gray days, my energy is always low too. What do you do about it? And then you might answer you, oh, I stay indoors. I watch movies. I drink coffee. What's your favorite coffee shop? Oh, I really like this coffee shop that's down the street. It's called whatever, the Barista Brothers. And it's in Borough Market in London. Oh, I've heard wonderful things about that place, right? What do you drink when you get there? What I'm doing here is I'm collecting information about you. I'm eliciting through open questions and closed questions. I'm eliciting you to give me information, but I'm not giving you any of my information. The only information I'm sharing about myself is a reflection of what you've already told me. You like that coffee shop? I like that coffee shop. You get tired in the gray? I get tired in the gray. But because of the elicitation, because of the way the conversation is being structured, it doesn't feel like I'm just agreeing with you.
And what is elicitation?
Elicitation is a process where you indirectly collect information about another person, meaning you know that you're collecting that information. You know that you are presenting questions in a way that will elicit a response, but the person that you're talking to doesn't know that's what you're doing. So in this interview, this is not elicitation. You ask me questions, I answer your questions. During elicitation, you learn other things about a person. Would you like to do an elicitation exercise?
Yeah, sure.
So let's do an elicitation exercise. So we're going to have a conversation. I want you to know right now, and I want everybody watching and listening to know, this is not a real conversation.
Okay.
This is an elicitation conversation. So I'm telling you that because I want you to practice in your head, I can't trust this conversation.
Okay.
I need you to tell yourself, like, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. Because my job to elicit from you is to make it feel as real as possible.
Okay.
Okay? So the more comfortable that you are in the conversation, the more you will elicit. So I'm telling you this because I want you to try to resist.
Okay.
And I'm telling everybody watching this because they will be able to see your body language, your facial expressions, and they'll be able to see how much you're resisting or if you start to believe the conversation is real.
Okay. So I should resist giving you information?
No.
Okay.
I don't want you to resist giving me information.
Okay.
I want you to remember that this conversation we're about to have, it's going to feel like we're really friends.
Okay.
But we're not.
Okay.
I am trying to take information from you,
Yeah.
okay? All right. Francesca, how are you today?
I'm all right. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. So we were talking before we came on camera about the fact that you go home often. How often do you go home?
Maybe once every 2 months.
And Romania is home.
Yeah, Romania.
Do you go back because there's work there, or is it just family?
It's just family and friends. Yeah, I like to visit them. I'm very close with my family.
Who are you closest with?
My parents and my brother.
Did you grow up close to your parents, or did it happen later in life?
It was on and off. Like, we were close, and then, teenage years, we kind of, as it happens, and then we became close once again, once I matured a bit.
So two things that's really interesting there, right? First, I was never really able to connect with my parents, so I didn't really grow up close to my parents. But as I got much older, right, as I got into my 40s, then I could really relate to my parents.
Oh.
And that maturity finally kicked in. How did you connect with your parents? How were you able to find that maturity so much younger than I was?
I guess because I was studying a lot of psychology and, I was working with therapists before for like a long time in my life. So, I kind of, I guess, accelerated that process.
Is your brother also close to your parents?
Yeah.
And you're close to your brother?
Yeah, very
So
close.
I'm not very close to my sisters. We always grew up competitive. How did you become close to your brother?
I became close by kind of trying to find similarities between us. And also, we went through a lot of hardships together. So that bonded us.
So it sounds like you did the majority of the work to try to make you close?
I mean, I think the hardships just happened and then we became close. But maybe because I'm the oldest, I put a bit more effort into the relationship. He's a bit more nonchalant.
And everybody else is still in Romania, or do they also
Well, my
travel
brother
back?
moved to Barcelona now, but yeah, we all kind of come in the same time.
And how does he like Barcelona?
He loves it.
Does he?
It's like the best city for him.
I've heard great things about it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be very beautiful and artsy and architectural.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, he lives in a student accommodation with a rooftop pool and a cinema room and 10-minute walk from the beach. So he's having the best life.
Okay, so we'll stop this now.
Yeah.
How much did you find yourself struggling to remember that wasn't a real conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I had to keep reminding myself, like, wow, that's really interesting. We're connecting, but I had to remind myself, like, oh, this isn't real.
This isn't real. We're not connecting.
Yeah.
I was there exclusively just to learn information about you. So let me tell you what I elicited from you.
Yeah.
Because remember, I didn't ask these things directly, but this is what I learned from you just talking.
Yeah.
Okay? Your brother's in college.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you if he was in college, but you told me he lives in student housing.
Yeah.
Right? Also, he is in Barcelona, but he's from Romania.
Yeah.
So that tells me that somehow he can afford travel. And somehow he can afford that travel and schooling.
Yeah.
But he himself probably doesn't work or doesn't work very much. So that tells me that your parents have some kind of funding source. Your parents are paying for it, most likely.
Yeah.
You are the one in the family who is most likely the profile that is the family keeper, the person who keeps everyone connected, the sticky glue, because you go back, your parents don't come here, it doesn't sound like very often, and your brother goes back, so and you are the one who is trying to be connected to him, and you are the one who is trying to be connected to your parents. So that tells me that you might be the one that's the most family oriented. Whether or not you are the most family oriented naturally, or whether that's something that came about because of your studying psychology. Now you feel guilty and you feel like you have to connect them. I don't know that yet, but I do feel like you are the person who's trying to keep everyone together. You're the one who was close to your parents and then distant and then close again. It also sounds like you're a very cerebral person, like you're a very objective more than subjective person. That's why what you studied became something that you then applied in your life. We didn't talk about the hardships. I wanted to ask direct questions about what are these hardships, but I didn't go into that. But what that tells me is that there's probably also been something that traumatized you and your brother because the two of you went through these hardships together. And the reason that you talked about the hardships only between you and your brother and not you and your parents was possibly because the trauma that you suffered was from your parents.
Oh my God.
So how much of that elicitation assessment was correct?
Yeah, that was like very close to 100% accurate. That's really good.
And that's what we learned how to do. And that's what
5 minutes.
and that's what elicitation can do for you. And that's why we teach elicitation at Everyday Spy, and we teach business owners and people how to use it. And we teach single people, married people, older people, younger people, because it's so powerful. You can use that to win clients. You can use it to make sure that the person that you're dating is truly who they say they are. You can use it to start a new relationship. You can use it with your kids to build a stronger connection with your kids. Elicitation is a very valuable tool. But the original question that you asked was about seduction. True seduction starts there. True seduction starts with a conversation that is an elicitation conversation where we start to understand the values that the target experiences, what they care about, and then we replicate those values back. Because when you replicate values back, it subconsciously translates to, I can trust this person, which subconsciously translates to, I can trust this person with my body.
Super fascinating. And you're kind of having a read, on people as well, like you're reading people. Are there any other techniques you use to read people?
Body language is a great one. So if you go back to our elicitation exercise, and I'm going to encourage you to do this, and I'll encourage everybody listening and watching, and maybe in the edit, I want you to do this too.
Yeah.
When I was asking you questions, I was watching your body language, and there was a lot of smiling. There was a lot of open positioning with your body. Your arms were open. Your hand gestures were open.
Yeah.
You've been sitting with your legs crossed the entire time that we've been having the interview. So that's baseline.
Yeah.
This is probably just because it's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
It's not because you're feeling attacked or threatened. But most importantly, I was asking you these questions about your past, and you kept looking to your left. And you look to your left. For most people in a Western society, you speak English, obviously. I believe Romanian is read from left to right.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you're talking to somebody in a Western society, they read the same way that they see a chronology. They see a timeline.
Yeah.
When most of us, if I ask you to visualize your childhood, most people are going to think of their childhood on this side, and then they grow in this direction because that's the same way that you read from left to right. So when you know that that's how people read, you can also trust that that is how they will view a chronology. So then when you ask them questions about time, when you ask them to remember their childhood, they should look to the left.
Yeah.
When you ask them to remember anything other than today, they should look to the left. When you ask them about the future, you should see their eyes look to the right. When you ask them to create something that isn't a memory, they should look to the right, right? So that's what I was doing with you during our elicitation. And you'll see that in the playback. You'll see how I ask you a question about childhood or about the past, and you look to the left. And that's how I know that you're being honest, but it's also how I can see that we are connecting.
Yeah.
Even though I told you don't connect with me,
Yeah.
I could still see.
I couldn't help it. Yeah. And what if someone is lying, for instance? Would that mean they're looking to the right?
Exactly right. So if, again, I'm specifically talking about a person who is based in a Western culture. Because if it's an Eastern culture where they read from right to left or they read from top to bottom, you have to adjust your expectations. You have to look for people looking up when they're thinking about their childhood.
Yeah.
Or if they read from right to left, you have to think about a culture where they look to the right. And you have to adjust yourself to the person. But since most people watching this are speaking English or they speak English, they're probably coming from the same background as you and I. So the brain has two hemispheres. It has a left quadrant or a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. Your left hemisphere is your logical hemisphere.
Yeah.
Your right is your creative hemisphere. Well, what that means is when you're accessing the left side of your brain, when you're accessing the fact-based logical part of your brain, your eyes actually move in the same direction as that hemisphere. So if I ask you a math question, you'll probably look to your left to figure it out. You just did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I ask you to invent something new, you're going to look to your right, right? If I were to ask you to be like, hey, name your perfect man or describe your perfect man, you would probably look to the right and be like, he would have this and he would have that. Because you're tapping into that creative half of your brain. So that's another way that you can kind of start to understand how people work. Now, with all what I'm giving you are called micro expressions.
Yeah.
Micro expressions are not fully reliable until you understand the person's baseline. There are some people who naturally look left when they're being creative, and there are some people who naturally look right when they're being logical. So you can't, it's not a cheat sheet for all people. Yeah. But it helps you understand the person that you're talking to, and you can test them in advance. You can ask them truth-based questions. Yeah. You know, what's your middle name? Oh, my middle name is North. And then now if you know their middle name is North and they look to the right, that's giving you information like, oh, that's their truth quadrant. That's where they look when they're telling you the truth. How old are you? Oh, I turned 45 last year. They did it again. And you know they're 45. That's another indicator of truth. Yeah. So you might be dealing with somebody who's atypical, but still consistent.
Is that why in interrogation situations, you know, the CIA or, you know, FBI, they start with like, what's your name? What's your age? To like sort of assess that baseline?
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I want you to understand something that most people don't understand. And nobody's ever asked me this question before, so I'm really glad that we're talking about this. You just mentioned an interrogation. What CIA carries out 99% of the time is not an interrogation. It's just a conversation. So what's the difference between an interrogation and a conversation, right? Because there's lots of people out there who are teaching interrogation skills. There's lots of people out there who will compare negotiations with kidnappers to business negotiations with the bank. But they're completely different things, because in an interrogation, the person you're talking to is captive. They're under your control. An interrogation means that there's a person sitting in a room and they can't get out of the room. And that person probably doesn't have food unless you bring them food. And that person has no control over the temperature of the room. That person may not even be able to control what they're wearing. That's an interrogation. When you put a person into an interrogation setting, they already feel like they have no control. And that's part of the psychology of an interrogation. You're trying to break them down. So when you come into an interrogation room and you start with, what's your name? What's your age? What's your date of birth? Whatever. What you're doing is you're exercising to them the fact that they have no control and they have to answer your questions. If you were to come in and ask them, how are you doing today? They could lie about that. They could say, I'm fine, when they're not. Or they could say, I'm tired, when they're not. And that gives them a sense of power. You need them to feel powerless. So you come in and you ask fact-based questions that you can verify, because that tells them that you're in control. Whereas when you meet somebody on the street, or when you meet somebody in a boardroom, or when you meet somebody on a date, you don't have control. They're not in an interrogation room. They have control over what they're wearing. They can walk out at any time. They don't have to answer your questions. So it's a completely different set of skills.
You were in an interrogation situation, right? You talk about it in the book. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We outline a story in our book about how I was not captured, but I was detained when I was in Falcon. And I went through an interrogation in Falcon. And it was a very stressful experience for me because, first of all, whenever anybody pulls you aside, you're nervous. It's funny. My son and daughter are children. And every now and then when we're going through the airport alarm, the metal detector will go off when they're going through it. And then when that happens, they get pulled aside, and then their stuff has to be searched, or so they have to talk to a security guard. So it's a very nerve-wracking experience for them, just walking through a metal detector and having the metal detector pick up, their shoes or their bracelet or something, right?
Same for me. I'm always I have nothing to hide, and I'm still nervous.
So that's an example of, all you're doing is being pulled aside from a metal detector, and that's nerve-wracking. So anytime we're singled out, we get stressed out. So for me, when I was singled out and then taken to a separate room and put into a chair with these two guards that sat opposite me, it was a very stressful situation. Now, CIA teaches us how to handle interrogations. And they teach us how to prepare for an interrogation. So as I'm being pulled into this room, I'm going through all of these lessons in my head. I need to control my breathing. I need to be ready for this. I need to be ready for that. I need to be ready for them to sweat me out. I need to be ready for this double questioning. And it didn't happen that way. And when my interrogation was so different than the interrogation that I was trained to handle, when that happened, it was all good news for me. Because now all of a sudden I realized that what I was experiencing wasn't as hard as what I had been trained for. So your confidence goes up. And then what I was experiencing also wasn't what I was taught, which then shows me that the people interrogating me are not as skilled as I am. So now I am prepared mentally to withstand the interrogation. And I'm also increasing my confidence because I realize the people I'm talking to aren't that good at interrogation. So it was an incredible experience after I was done. I was nervous the whole time because I never knew when it was going to end, and I didn't know if this was real or is this just the warm up? So I didn't know what to expect the whole time. But when I got on a plane and I actually left the country and I was safe again, and I was able to reflect on it, I realized why it's so important that we all train for the hardest thing. Because if you're always training for the hardest thing, then when reality presents itself, not only are you ready for it, but you're comfortable with it. So if you train to run 10 miles and then someday you actually have to run 2 miles, you're fine.
Yeah.
If you're trained to walk in the cold and then one day you get stuck walking in the rain, you're going to be fine. Right? Practice a 3-day fast. And if you can go 3 days without eating food, then for sure you can go 1 day without eating food.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, fascinating. And what does CIA train you like when it comes to interrogations? Like, what's the hard stuff they train you for?
There's a number of things. Now, interrogations, generally they start with mental stress, and only in very dangerous situations do they transition to physical stress. And when we talk about physical stress, there's 2 types of physical stress. There's non-kinetic physical stress, which is essentially just uncomfortable positions. And then there's kinetic physical stress, which is when someone hits you or slaps you, or they pull out your nails, or they break a toe. Like the torture that most people think about is all kinetic. Somebody's physically hitting you. But you can go through an advanced interrogation, which is some people call torture, but you never touch the person. You just make them sit on their knees. And after you sit on your knees for 5 or 7 minutes, it really hurts. Or you put them in some sort of awkward body position where they have to lean on their forehead or something. You're not touching them, but it causes pain. So you've got these 3 different phases of an interrogation. You've got standard interrogation, advanced interrogation, and then your full-on torture. CIA prepares us for an interrogation and advanced interrogation, because by the time torture comes, you can't keep your secrets anymore. Like it doesn't matter. Like you'll say anything to get out of torture, which is why torture is such a legitimately unreliable thing. So they spend a lot of time prepping you for the first phase, the mental phase, which is really, I think, what you're asking about. What are the things that they train you for in that phase? So the first thing is, whenever you're being questioned, whenever you're being interrogated, whether it's a job interview or whether it's an actual military interrogation, the person asking the questions, the interrogator, they want to demonstrate to you that they're in control. So they show up late. That's a very common thing. You sit in a lesser seat than they sit. That's also a very common thing. They start the conversation. They control the pace. They control the volume. They might make the room colder, or they might make the room hotter specifically to make you uncomfortable. And then you don't know what the state of the room is, but they do. So they'll make the room hot, and then they'll show up in light clothes. But you're in heavy clothes and now you're sweating. Or they'll make the room very cold and they'll show up in warm clothes, but you're in normal clothes and now you get very cold. These are all very common techniques that happen in interrogation. Again, whether it's a job interview or whether it's a big government interrogation. There are other things that happen in government interrogations that are not so common in work interrogations. For example, you use time to break your target down. So in a work interview, they might be 5 or 7 minutes late. That's just to show control, right? I'm important. You're not. You will wait for me. I won't wait for you. That's why they do it in a job interview. But when it comes to a government interrogation or military interrogation, they'll make you wait for hours. 3 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And you have no control. You're not getting food. You're probably not getting water. And you're sitting in a very cold or a very hot room. And all of that is there to do 2 things. It's there to stress you out because you feel like you have no control, but it's also there to disorient you because you don't know how long you've been there. I'm sure that you've had the experience where you sit somewhere and it feels like it's 5 minutes, but it's been an hour. And there's other times where you sit somewhere and it feels like it's been an hour, but it's only been 10 minutes. That time distortion is very, very powerful when it comes to interrogation. When somebody doesn't know how long they've been sitting somewhere, when they don't know if it's sunlight or dark outside, they lose their sense of reality. Well, when they lose their sense of reality, they lose their sense of judgment. A very honest person can become quite dishonest when they are desperate because they're disoriented.
Yeah.
And a dishonest person can become very honest when they're disoriented.
Yeah.
So you want to use all these tools to your advantage.
So, you've been in so many high stress situations, just like the interrogation or, some other situations where your life was at risk, right? Like in Falcon. So how do you manage to keep your calm or composure under stress? Are there certain techniques you use?
When you're in a stressful situation, it's a stressful situation for everybody. There's nobody who's calm naturally under stress. What they're doing is they are practicing some sort of mechanism to cope with the stress. And if you don't have something that you're trained in, then you cope with the stress in whatever your natural way is. And you've heard of the sympathetic responses, right? The 4 sympathetic responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. That's how most of us deal with external trauma, with stress, naturally.
Yeah.
But there are techniques that you can be trained in that give you an alternative to your sympathetic responses. So a big tool that we're all given is breathing techniques. Box breathing is a phenomenal technique to lower your sympathetic response because you control your heart rate, you control your breathing, you control your blood pressure, all through box breathing. And if anybody doesn't know what box breathing is, you basically breathe in, hold your breath, breathe out, hold your breath, and then repeat. And whether that's 3 seconds or 5 seconds, 7 seconds or 15 seconds, you can decide for yourself. But it's that pattern of breathing in, holding, breathing out, holding. And that is proven time and time again to help reduce stress. Another breathing tool that we use is actually very similar to hyperventilating. It's called back breathing. Back breathing is when you take a rapid breath in and then you give yourself back pressure when you exhale, because on the exhale is when your heart rate actually drops. So back breathing looks a little bit like this: a big breath in and then a long hissing breath out. So that tongue between your teeth creates back pressure in your lungs. And that back pressure in your lungs literally lowers your heart rate. So you can actually touch your body anywhere, your throat or your wrist, where you can take a pulse while you do that breathing, and you will watch your pulse literally slow down. It's an amazing thing. So back breathing is a great tool that we use. We're also taught visualization. Visualization is another great tool to be able to mentally put you in a more comfortable scenario. So whether you're visualizing yourself on a beach or visualizing yourself on the street, visualizing yourself completing the job interview or finishing the race, whatever it is, if you know that you are responsive to what you visualize, you can completely transform your stress. And it doesn't work for everybody, because visualization is really the most powerful for people who have strong visual cortexes, people who can really imagine clearly. I am not one of those people. When I use my imagination, it's unclear, it's
you don't
foggy.
See clear images.
Correct.
I'm the same.
But there are some people who, when you tell them to visualize a beach, they're on a beach. I am not that way. So I need physical tools more than I need visualization tools. But from the people that use visualization tools, like my wife can visualize very clearly, and she can close her eyes and you can tell her that she's somewhere cold, and you will watch her skin goose pimple. You can tell her that she's eating oranges, and you can watch her start to swallow more often. Right? There's people who are very, very powerful visualizers.
That's so interesting. You also mentioned emotional suppression techniques in the book. What are those?
We all have emotional reactions, and things like fear or anger or injustice, they jump out at us. And if we don't know how to control our emotions, suppress our emotions, then they become the dominant emotion. Emotional suppression isn't what it sounds like. It's actually kind of funny. It's a bit of a misnomer. You would think that when you're suppressing an emotion, it means that you know you're going to get angry, so you hide your anger. You press it down, right? Like Spock in Star Wars or Star Trek. In reality, emotional suppression, the way to handle strong emotions is to let them run their course. But you let them run their course understanding that physiologically you can't actually stop your emotions. If I say something to you that makes you feel angry, there is nothing you or I can do to keep you from feeling angry. So what has to happen is you have to go through that whole cycle. And the cycle of an emotion is actually very quick. It's very fast. Remember, we were talking about left brain and right brain. All of your emotions center from your right brain, from your creative brain, which is the faster processing of your two brains.
Yeah.
When you ask somebody a question that's a logical question, which is generally how we test if somebody is smart or not, right? We ask them a logical, knowledge-based question. Well, some people answer quickly and some people answer slowly.
Yeah.
That's their processing speed. But that's not their right brain speed. That's their left brain speed, because that's the logical, rational part of your brain. So if you're somebody who thinks slowly, answers slowly, if you're the person who doesn't know a math answer right away, it takes you a few seconds, you might process slowly on your left brain. But that's not how you process on your right brain. On your right brain, you process very quickly. Now, there's a funny inversion that happens where very smart people who are very left brain oriented, will actually have emotional cycles that are slower. That's why if you've ever talked to somebody who's very smart about emotions, they don't sound so smart anymore.
No, it's so true, yeah.
So the faster they process on the left brain, generally speaking, rule of thumb, the slower they process on the right brain. So that's why sometimes it feels like smart people don't even get mad, or they don't get offended, or they don't get sad. They do, but it takes so long for them to process that it's a while before it actually sits through. The same thing happens in reverse, where people who are very slow to process facts can process emotions very fast. So people who are not necessarily gifted at academics are usually very sensitive emotionally. So then they get angry and they get sad and they have these huge spikes, and we call them Latina, right? So there's all these stereotypes, but it really just boils down to left brain, right brain. And if you want to control your emotions, it's not about pushing them down. It's about letting them work. So if you get angry, get angry.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean start yelling and breaking shit. It means I'm going to be angry now. And then you just kind of sit there and you keep your face neutral and you let your anger come. Yeah. And the cycle will finish.
And is there a certain time it takes, as a rule of thumb? Because I've heard some people say maybe it's 90 seconds or... It's
fast. So I can't say that I have a rule of thumb for all people, but what I will say is it's not hours. It's seconds. Just like you said, you can count it in seconds. And it doesn't mean that they go from not being angry all the way around to being not angry again. It just means you have to get over the peak. Yeah. Because the peak happens very, very fast. For somebody who processes emotions very quickly, they might reach the peak in 5 to 7 seconds. And then they might be in the peak for another 5 to 7 seconds. So you could theoretically be on the declining side within 15 or 20 seconds if you just let them get angry.
That's so powerful, actually. And I think it's not just for, CIA spies, but just for like everyday people, like let yourself feel the emotion.
Absolutely.
And it will just go away, consume itself, because most people tend to suppress them. So that's actually such a good psychological sort of technique.
I remember when I was in the military, I had a boss who told me to never write an email when you're angry. Yeah. And we've probably all heard that before, right? Never respond when you're angry. Yeah. I would change that and I would say, don't respond when you're in your peak anger. Because what happens is if you read an email that's triggering, if you get a phone call that's triggering, if you're in the middle of a conversation that's triggering, what happens is the longer it goes on, it keeps you in the peak of your feelings. So that's why people argue at all, is because we're having a conversation. It's a very nice conversation. And then I say something and you get hurt, and then you say something and then I get hurt. And then I say something again that continues your pain, and you say something that continues my pain. And all of a sudden we're holding this peak emotion. Whereas if we were to just pause for a second, take a couple of deep breaths and be like, just give me a second before I talk about this. We're already coming down. So now when we start to talk again, we're not at the peak. We're on the decline. And I guarantee you, everybody listening knows what it's like to be on the decline and then it goes back up again.
Yeah.
Well, you do the same thing again. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
And then you right there's the decline again. It's a super powerful tool.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool for positivity. It's also a very powerful tool when you're trying to manipulate somebody. Because when you're trying to manipulate somebody, you want them to stay in their peak. So when they try to slow it down, you have to speed it up. So when you want to keep somebody sad, they might want to slow it down. And this is, we've already admitted that espionage is dark.
Yeah.
Life is dark too. And for anybody who's been in a relationship that's abusive, or if anybody's been in a relationship that's manipulative, or if you think you're in one now, if your partner does the things I'm talking about, you know for sure they are manipulating you. You know for sure they are abusing you. They may not realize that's what they're doing because they haven't been trained. They're not aware of it, most likely because it was also done to them. Their parents did it to them, or a previous spouse or partner did it to them. So now they're just replicating what they saw. But when someone wants you to feel bad about yourself, they will sit there and let you talk shit about yourself. And then when you try to pause, when you try to slow it down, they will interrupt, and then they will start they will say things that also make you feel bad.
Yeah.
Or if you try to debate them, they will keep tearing you down, and they'll let it sit and they'll let it fester because they know that sadness is going peak after peak after peak after peak, right?
Yeah.
You never answer my phone calls. You don't answer my text messages. You must not think about me. You must not care about me. And then, you try to defend yourself and you're like, I'm just really busy and work is what it is. And I promise you it's not. No, don't even make excuses. Now you're just making excuses, and you're making excuses because I can tell that. And all of a sudden, like they keep pinging that peak emotion, and that really makes you malleable to their will.
So it's so important for people to like watch out for that red flag. So it's important that you mention it. Just going back to, sort of like these really stressful situations and what CIA teaches you, are there some other sort of survival techniques that CIA teaches you? Or, if you were to give us like the ultimate survival kit, what would you tell us?
So it's a great question. If you believe it or not, the answer to most stress isn't in techniques or tools after the stress happens. It's in preparing yourself before the stress happens. So CIA teaches us about something called willpower. Everybody's heard the term willpower, but very few people have defined what willpower is. Most people would argue that willpower is some mixture of discipline and commitment, right? Like it's follow through. I'm just going to tough it out. That's actually not what willpower is. Willpower in definition at CIA, willpower according to psychology, is an actual measurable amount of energy. And energy is measured in kilojoules, and those kilojoules are carried in your body. And it's a mixture of your fitness and your diet and your hydration level. And all of that tells you what your capacity is for willpower. So if you think of like a car has a tank, a gas tank, a fuel tank. When that fuel tank is full, the car can go a long distance. When the fuel tank is empty, the car can't go as far. But there's also the value of the quality of the fuel itself. If the fuel is a high octane, clean fuel, the car can go even further on a full tank than it could go with a lower octane fuel. So when you compare your body to a car, what that means is you want to fuel your car with willpower, fuel your body with willpower. And that willpower is literally what you put in your body. So we put a lot of natural sugars. We put a lot of hydrating, high fiber, nutrient-dense materials into our system. That's how we're trained to eat. It's how we're trained to drink. It's how we're trained to handle ourselves. We don't carry processed bars unless we have to. we eat off of whatever's local in the community, whatever's actually in the location where we are. So sometimes that's tropical fruit. Sometimes that's desert fruit. Sometimes that's ground roots, right? You don't ever really know. So you eat what's local, but you're always trying to fuel your body for the stress that you know is coming.
Yeah.
So in addition to the breathing techniques and the visualization, that's all stuff you do after the stress has presented itself. But the real secret sauce is in preparing yourself for the stress that is yet to come, at the risk of talking too much.
No, please do.
Think about what the average person does in the morning. The morning is one of the most important times to fill your fuel tank. Well, what do most people do? They don't eat a significant breakfast. They drink coffee. Coffee is a diuretic. It reduces your hydration. It spikes your chemical levels because of the caffeine. It spikes your acidity in your digestive system because of the acid that's in the coffee. Now, it's a habit, and it feels good to have a caffeine high, and I get why people do it, but it is actually the opposite of what CIA teaches us to do. So in contrast, what CIA tells us to do is eat an apple, some strawberries, and drink 500 milliliters of water. Why? Because the apple brings all this fiber with it. The strawberries have all these sugars, natural sugars in it, and the water hydrates your system. So now you're still giving yourself an energy boost. The difference between a caffeine high and a glucose high that comes from something like strawberries is, coffee is obviously much higher, but the after effect is the thing that's the most important. You crash after caffeine, but after your strawberry high, you still have apples. They say that the sugar content in an apple is comparable to the sugar content in a candy bar. Well, people eat candy bars all the time. They don't very often eat apples. The sugar content is the same, but the crash in a candy bar happens after like 20 minutes. There is no crash after you eat an apple. That apple will sustain you for 2 hours.
No, that's so powerful. And in the book you also talk about some other survival techniques. So I remember one specific one, if you have a backpack, have like a strap. So like, what are some other very specific survival techniques that the CIA teaches you?
So when it comes to physical survival, safety, right? Not necessarily mental willpower or stress. What you're really looking for are things that are mobile. And most people will tell you that if you want to be safe, you have to hunker in place. Think about all the people, if your parents are like my parents, they've got canned food and bottles of water. And if some disaster happens, they're going to shelter in place and they're going to stay home. CIA teaches something very different. They actually teach that mobility is the best tool for survival. You don't want to be stuck in one place. You want to be mobile so that you can move where the resources are. So whenever it comes to anything that they teach us that's survival related, it's all based on this idea of mobility, something we call get off the X. The X is the place where you will die. If you get off the X, you will survive. And then even if the X moves, you get off the X again, right? So what are some of those mobility tools? We always have shoes with laces. I'm wearing shoes with laces right now. Shoes with laces that are closed-toed are incredibly valuable. They keep dirt out. They keep rocks out. They keep glass out. They keep the heat out. So and shoes with laces stay on your feet, whereas shoes without laces can slip off. They also always tell us to carry a backpack with 2 straps, not a messenger pack with 1 strap or a purse with 1 strap, and not like a side sling, something that goes across your body, because you want two separate straps that you can tighten so that it stays tight to your back. That makes it so you can run, you can walk, you can sweat, you can climb, and the weight stays centered on your back. Which is a good stable place for you to carry weight. If you've got a purse or a side sling or a backpack that you're carrying on one side, all of a sudden it's awkward, right?
I mean, I think all women have tried running for the bus or something with the purse, seeing how uncomfortable it is. I get it.
And then there's other things that they also teach us. We always want to have a raincoat or some layer that keeps the moisture off of you. And that's because you have to preserve your clothes. Dry clothes keep your body heat in. Dry clothes also don't break down very quickly. If you get clothes wet or if you get clothes dirty, then the dirt gets in between the fibers, or the wet gets in between the fibers and brings oils and dirts with it. And then as the fabric moves with that dirt inside it, the fabric starts to break down. So then your clothes will break down. But if you keep them dry, then dirt stays on the outside, oil stays on the outside. They don't get between the fibers.
Yeah.
So you always want to have a raincoat or a rain layer, an umbrella, because it keeps the moisture out and it keeps your body heat in. We also talk a lot about sun protection. So whether it's hats, sunglasses, long sleeves, long pants, even if you don't think you need it, because the sun is one of the most damaging things for your body, and your body is actually, your skin is actually an organ. So we don't really care about skin cancer, but what I'm telling you is if you need to conserve your resources, you need to stay out of the sun, which is why Middle Eastern cultures that live in the sun, what kind of clothing do they wear? Long flowing clothing, which you would never imagine. So in our everyday carry kits and our survival kits at CIA, it really is laced shoes, some sort of raincoat, a backpack with 2 straps, some sort of sun protection, and then we always carry cash. And we always carry cash in small denominations, but in large amounts. What's a large amount? About $200 US. Here, I've been carrying about 300 British pounds because pounds are just, it's expensive in London, but you also, the pound is so much stronger than the dollar right now, you need more pounds. But what I find is just if you carry a large amount of money in 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, you can afford almost anything. And especially in a disaster. In a disaster, people aren't going to have change. So you don't want to have to buy a ride with $100 bill. You want to be able to spend $15 or $20 in a smaller denominated currency to buy what you need.
Those are really interesting and helpful. What about, for instance, a woman like me in London, being like, let's say, in a shady area of London or, whatever else part of the world. Are there any sort of survival tips you could give us?
You're using the word survival, but I think what you're talking about is protection.
Or protection, that's a
yeah.
better
No,
one,
it's okay because I want to make sure that I'm differentiating the two. So first, if you are concerned about your security, the 2 things that CIA teaches us are most important are time and distance. With time and distance, you have more opportunity to keep yourself safe. And what does that mean? Distance is obvious. Distance is physical distance. So if you're worried about somebody, you want to stay away from them. If you're worried about a dangerous, shady part of town, you want to stay away from that location. So distance is obvious. What is time? Time is how long it takes before the threat presents itself to you. So if it's a person and you stand far away from the person, you're automatically increasing your time because it will take them further to get to you. But sometimes time applies to a shady part of town. A shady part of town at noon is different than it is at midnight. So you've got time that can have a couple different applications. So yes, you can learn self-defense. You can learn how to fight with an open palm or fight with a closed fist, and you can carry brass knuckles or tasers or mace if you want to, but what you're doing is you're giving away time and distance and you're replacing them with a weapon instead. The problem is if you don't know how to use that weapon or if you can't reach that weapon, if you don't have the time to get your mace out of your purse, you've given up everything. You've given up your 2 biggest advantages, time and distance, and the tool that you need isn't available to you. So what I would actually argue for most people is use time and distance to keep yourself safe. If you have to go to a shady part of town, if you're driving, park underneath a light. That way, no matter whether it's daytime or nighttime, your vehicle is under a light, which automatically is a deterrent for criminals. If you have to go to a shady part of town, arrange to have a driver pick you up and drop you off. That way you can stay inside of a building and have a driver pick you up and take you to your car, even if your car is close. Don't walk to your car. Don't walk 5 blocks in a dangerous place. Just pay a couple of dollars or a couple of pounds to have an Uber carry you instead. It's so much safer. Have a friend be with you. Carry lights on you. Carry a whistle on you. People underestimate the value of a whistle. A whistle is not something that you use just in a dangerous situation. A whistle is something that you use just to make sure a dangerous situation doesn't occur. Think about what happens when you hear a car alarm go off. When you hear a car alarm, everybody looks towards the alarm.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when you hear a whistle? Everybody looks towards the whistle.
Yeah.
So a whistle is not there to help you when bad shit happens. A whistle is there so that before anything dangerous happens, you can get people's attention.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that. Also, just to go back to a more lighter, positive topic. In the book, you talked a lot about building rapport. And it seems like, building connection and having these social skills is a really important part of being a spy. So, for someone who's shy or introverted, do you have any tips for building these social skills?
It's funny that you say that, because the general assumption is that introverts are bad at social skills. Like, introverts need help. They need tips. I would actually debate and say that introverts are better at social skills than extroverts. Extroverts are very good at being full of energy when people are around.
Yeah.
But full of energy doesn't actually help to build connection. When someone's the center of attention, that doesn't mean everybody likes them. It means that they're entertaining everybody else around them.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite difficult for extroverts to build meaningful connections because they're assholes, right? They're clowns. They're goofballs. They need everybody's attention, which makes it very hard for them to make one person feel special.
Yeah.
Introverts are the opposite. Introverts are already naturally inclined to building rapport, close connections with singular individuals.
Yeah.
And a big part of it is because this, in a one-on-one situation, it's where they are more comfortable anyways, rather than in a situation where they have 7 people they have to entertain.
Yeah.
So if you're an introvert and you're hearing this conversation, you already have natural skills for this.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm about to share is just how you layer on those natural skills. So when you're trying to build rapport is all about understanding the other person's point of view. What do they care about? What do they value? What do they worry about? What do they want? And you can get all of that through many of the questions that we've talked about. Elicitation can help you have those questions. Open-ended and close-ended questions can also help you understand what somebody's interested in. Natural curiosity. If you just ask somebody a question, especially if you're trying to build rapport, if you're in a intimate setting, unless they're trying to hide from you, they will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And then you've got all sorts of tools where you showing your authentic self, you showing your vulnerability, invites the other person to do the same thing. The most important thing to understand when you're trying to build rapport is that the process of building rapport, the process of building a connection, it's not that different than building a bank account. So CIA teaches us this concept called social capital. And social capital is just like fiat capital, just like real currency, where the currency amounts go up and down. So you might work for a whole day to make whatever, $100, and then you go to the grocery store and you spend $60, and you end the day with $40, right? So you earned money, you spent money, and then you saved money. The same thing is true with social capital. You and I go out and have coffee and we talk about business. As we have that conversation, we're both building capital with each other. We're building trust. We're building connection. We're building rapport. And in that process, we're building this capital. Well, now if I ask you to introduce me to somebody from your network, I'm spending my social capital. I'm saying, hey, I know that I've earned a little bit of your support. Now I need your help. I need a favor. Well, whenever that favor happens, I'm spending my capital, just like I'm going to the grocery store, and you are earning even more capital because I'm giving it to you. So then now you have given me a favor. I feel indebted to you. I feel like I owe you something now. which means that you can spend more social capital with me to get what you want. And that's a reciprocity that we have between us. That's all rapport is. All rapport is just understanding that everything you do gains and loses this social capital. And the people who are the best at managing relationships are the people who are able to manage that flow of social capital. Just like the people who are the best with money are the people who are able to balance their use of money. They don't go into debt. They don't save too much and never use it. They're able to just maintain a healthy relationship.
I love that explanation. I've never heard it before, but that's so good. Andy, thank you so much for all the value you provided in this podcast. It was super interesting. I'm sure our listeners will find it just as valuable as I did. So thank you so much again for being here and taking the time. It was great.
Absolutely. And thank you for the time, Francesca. Thank you for reading my book.
Of course. It was great. And I encourage everyone to, and I'll link it in the description below so they can order it as well.
Thank you, ma'am.